One of the best-kept secrets of World War II is that the Allied nations used astrology as a counterweapon against Adolf Hitler. Dr. John Marilesco, internationally known astrologer and author, has disclosed that he was a member of a top-secret organization charged with outwitting Hitler's personal astrologer, Karl Ernst Kraft. The British War Office knew that Kraft's advice greatly influenced Hitler's military strategy. It was the task of the Psychological Warfare Committee to anticipate this advice by using Kraft's own methods of astrological charting to predict Hitler's next move.
Adolf Hitler was using a personal astrology to plan his blitzkrieg campaign. We had to forestall him. We had to learn all the predictions that were made to Hitler. We had to come up with a counter-strategy if necessary. Well, we predicted. We knew in advance what Adolf Hitler was going to get in the way of astrological advice. When everybody expected Hitler to invade Britain, we were convinced that he wouldn't, because his Jupiter cycle had run out, and I know that Karl Ernst Kraft would never advise Hitler to expand in a non-Jupiter cycle, because expansion, blitzkrieg type of tactics could only be used during a Jupiter cycle. The third area of our endeavors was perhaps the most important one, because we falsified almanacs and calendars, and we printed leaflets with twisted astrological information to influence psychologically the German population. These leaflets were dropped by the millions over German cities, German naval installations, and so forth. And we had excellent reports from Germany that this was a major demoralizing factor, especially in the later part of the war.
What you are about to see may be quite different from anything you've ever witnessed before. There are no actors involved, and events have been filmed as they actually occurred. You'll meet some of the people who claim extraordinary powers and experience their world yourself. Simple and obvious thing to us. But as we try to fathom its depths, we are realizing that it is riddled with unexpected mysteries. For thousands of years, man considered himself a captive of time. Einstein challenged this theory and proved that time is relative. Now our conception of time is being challenged even further by people who claim to have the power to see into the future. Such claims may play havoc with our contemporary notions of reality, yet we are intrigued. Many of us long to step out of our humdrum technological existence and experience worlds beyond. Are there other dimensions around us that we can't yet detect? Are psychics, sensitives, prophets, and spiritual healers pathfinders to these new worlds? More and more scientists have come to recognize that the real meaning of a cult is not weird or bizarre, but hidden. They have begun to realize that it is not just the dark side of the moon that needs exploration, but the unknown side of our own natures as well.
On a summer night in Los Angeles, a man was murdered in this apartment house. The next morning, as they left for work, residents of the building found pieces of his body placed in their doorways. Beyond its twisted brutality, this bizarre police case is unusual in one other significant way. Baffled by a lack of solid clues and daring to be original in his search for the killer, a detective assigned to the case went to a beautiful woman for help. The woman was Cabrina Kincaid, and she is a psychic.
Cabrina, this is a picture of the victim when he was alive.
This man was mutilated. I mean, this was his head. I feel his head gone. His head and his hands and his body is being cut up. Do you know how this man was murdered? Was he mutilated?
He was.
Okay.
You described it.
I drew a picture before you got here because I got an immediate impression when I talked to you over the telephone of what the murderer looked like. And this is a picture here of what I think the man that you're looking for that killed the victim looks like. Now, is there an apartment building directly in front of the house where the man was murdered?
Yes,
okay, well, why is it that I feel he's not there? I mean, I get the picture of the victim being in this building. You know what I mean? Like I hate to say it, but kind of spread around the building.
Well, you would be right there. He's spread around the building.
They put him, okay. I see this man living in what I want to call a shack, because I can see an apartment building in front of him, but in the back I want to go behind. It's like a little lean-to. You can't even practically call it a house, but it's dirty and filthy. I'm seeing the picture of a knife. It's a long butcher knife, and I can see that there's a hose out front or some kind of a water faucet, and this man has washed off, the murderer has washed off the knife to get rid of the evidence. The manager of the building had something to do with it. I want to call penny pincher. He had something to do with the victim, because I get the electrical feeling around him. Very strong. I see a light bulb, and I don't know if that means anything to you or not. What?
Well, this is part of our evidence.
What?
The light bulb.
I mean, I don't understand. How does the light bulb?
It was taken out and placed by one of the parts of the body.
This man wasn't just killed, he was dismembered, because I can see parts of his body being taken and placed all over the apartment building. I mean, it wasn't as if he was just cut up. This man deliberately took piece by piece, like a hand and put it here, and a head and put it here, and pennies. Pennies are very important because he was a penny pincher. I see pennies next to the parts. And I think that the light bulb, I think that's where the light bulb came in. He was a penny pincher because he wouldn't pay his electricity. He wouldn't pay his electric payment or something. The man wanted electricity, and the manager wouldn't give him electrical things that he needed. So that the murderer more or less did this as a vendetta to the manager too. Okay, you penny pincher, here's a body for you. You know, you can have a body, and here's all the parts all over your place. Now you clean up the mess. And if you can find out who this man was living with and who his roommate was, you'll know who the murderer is.
Department as a whole, we don't use psychics. It's not our policy, let's put it that way. We need physical evidence for court. But myself, I took my partner with me on this case. He was a non-believer, walked out being a believer. He was amazed, and so was I.
In the past year and a half, I've been instrumental in helping the police solve 6 murders, and I've actually found 24 missing children. I work with the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office and all the different district attorneys throughout the United States, Canada, and even Europe. And they've been very good about working with me. Most people would think that it would be kooky to work with a psychic, but we have a very intelligent police force now, and I think that they're finally accepting psychics as a science. And this is something that I think will be more accepted as time goes on, because I think people are beginning to realize that there's more to this world than what you can just see, feel, taste, and touch. And they want all the help they can get. And fortunately, I've been able to prove myself, because every murder that I've ever worked on, I've solved. And every child I've ever looked for, I've found.
Stand by. You're on.
Good morning, this is Teddy. I want to welcome our huge studio audience here with us at Universal Studios this morning, and of course I want to introduce my very special guest, Bernadine Villanueva.
Thank you.
We have had Bernadine with us a number of times before. She is a very well-known spiritual healer and prophetess, probably one of the most accurate psychics in the world today. We have a lot of calls waiting, as you know, and as I said before and told you before the show, the last time you were on, we broke the all-time record for KGBS radio with over 60,000 people trying to call and get your advice and your predictions. So I am going to go to the telephones now. If you'll please state your questions briefly Let's get as many calls in as we can, because a lot of people who wanted to get in last time couldn't. 520-KGBS is our number.
Mickey and Teddy Show, you want to talk on the air?
With you almost right away.
Okay, turn off your radio and hang on, okay?
I feel that there's been a problem there with your blood count.
I see you just losing energy. It's as if you collapse. Just physically, as if you're just completely drained of energy. With this, there seems to be a tremendous deficiency with you also. I see that you will be better, and this is very close to you right now. Tonight, please be with me between this period of 7 and 8 p.m.
Many times the life of a psychic is a lonely one. In my own case, I work alone and pretty much walk my path alone. In order to do my work, I must have my moments of solitude, of total quiet and peace. During these precious few hours that I seek to myself, many of the visions come to me. So really I would say that I am never turned off. It's 24 hours a day.
Let's go to you for a second. With the hearing, I would like to see you after the show. With the children, keep them with you. They belong with you. And you'll see that things, everyone is right now, I just see you in tremendous turmoil with the children, and this is not right. There should be unity with you. And I see the three of you in meditation. Watch this happen, but keep them with you. It is important for their safety and welfare.
I have 7 children, 3 sons and 4 daughters, all very psychic, all truly dedicated in this field. The 9-year-old son has made many national predictions.
What does psychic mean to you, Bobby?
It's like when you get messages in your mind. The first time I got my psychic impression when I was around 5, and I started seeing things happening. First thing I saw happening was when 2 trains were coming together in my mind. Then a few days later, 2 trains did come together, and it killed many people.
The visions, many times, are terrifying. The plane crashes are especially bad. I feel, as it approaches time for a plane to crash, I feel this physically. And there have been hundreds of plane crashes accurately predicted before the happening. I see the plane crash, I see the bodies, of course.
A child dies in its mother's arms, and you must share her grief. A plane crashes in fog, and 100 people are burned to death. You see it before it happens, and know there is nothing you can do to stop it. This is called the gift of prophecy. Bernardine Villanueva claims the ability to see visions of the future. Some of her terrible visions are accompanied by an inner feeling that they can be prevented. And some of the people she warns listen to her.
Dr. Dolittle, as you may have had the pleasure of discovering, was a delightful fictional character who could talk to animals. He could talk to birds and insects, too. With his parrot Polynesia as a teacher and a meticulously kept notebook, the kindly doctor worked very hard to learn the animals' languages. If you think our illustration is a little far-fetched, drawn from a character in a children's books, meet Beatrice Klein. She talks to animals too, and she says they talk back to her.
Patches is being a lot better today. The last time I came down here, I kept making him talk about a problem that he'd had when he was young. And he didn't want to tell me about it, so he got so mad. After a while, he came over and lifted his leg and wet all over me. You are curious. You know I'm talking to you, don't you? And you really want to come over and see me, don't you? You bring her the little tiny gray mice, don't you? Because I'm seeing little tiny gray ones, and I'm seeing the little white ones. But she says she likes the gray ones better.
It's very true what she said about the white mice and all. Because I used to feed her white mice, and she wouldn't eat them. She'd just play around with them. Then when I started feeding her gray mice or darker colored mice, she'd eat them right off.
I wanted to know if Celine was aware of like the spiritual world and the world beyond.
Yes, animals, all animals are very much aware of the spiritual world, and they can see non-physical beings with their eyes. They are not afraid of death. Animals are not afraid of death. And I've had older ones that were very sick tell me, I want to go, but I don't want to leave the family because I don't want to hurt them.
Can you tell me why the previous owner of the goat gave him to me?
He said that where he used to live, he was always getting into trouble. He was constantly kicking out the barns, digging underneath the corrals. There was just no way the guy could keep him in. Was this his problem?
That's basically what it was.
But he's very happy where he is. He says he's not in with the female now, though.
No.
He says that female is really a nice, sweet goat. The most important thing that people should remember about any animal is to realize that the animal is an animal. It is not a human being. And if people can just realize that an animal does not feel and react to every situation in life as we, a human being, would, they would get along a lot better with their animals, and their animals would be a lot happier.
A high-rolling Texas oil man, down on his luck, is mysteriously drawn to a mystic named Doc Anderson. The result of their meeting? 17 straight producing wells, without a single dry hole, all credited to the extraordinary powers of Doc Anderson.
Steve, I had a lot of trouble. I'd go into the petroleum club, and they'd say, please get away from me, please get away. No, don't get close to me, you're jinxed. You know, they didn't want me around. I was like a leper. If I'd lease a piece of land somewhere, everybody would go the other way. My name then was Dry Hole Shaw, and it's a nice thing to be in a hotel on your last go-around in a meeting and somebody paid you, Dry Hole Shaw. That sure did help me with my prospective investors, too. But since then, the Dry Hole Shaw is all gone now. I guess I was the world's champion dry hole driller. I thought the only place you could get oil was at a service station. The well blew out. It blew me 30 feet in the air, nearly killed me. And the thing, of course, that came to my mind then was Doc told me, if I were you, buddy, I'd stay away from gas wells. Steve, before I met Doc Anderson, I drilled 70 dry holes, lost everything I'd made from before that period. And I was at the end of the road. One rig left, one more well. But I'd had it. There was no way to come out of that $875,000 in the hole. So I put a 45 to my head and I pulled the trigger, and it misfired. Then I read about Doc Anderson. I figured, well, I have nothing to lose at this point, nothing to lose. So I went to see Doc Anderson.
Mr. Shaw came into my office. He was distracted mentally and physically. And he talked of suicide. And I told him, I said, how can you expect to be forgiven if you take your own life?
Is it just possible, considering the frame of mind you were in at the time, you were down and desperate, considering committing suicide, you had even tried to commit suicide, that you were very susceptible to anyone's suggestion?
I guess I was susceptible to anything. Any man that just tried to blow his head off is pretty susceptible, I guess. However, nobody knew I was coming there. I didn't even know I was coming there. I changed my ticket at the Los Angeles International Airport.
John was the type of a man that he didn't believe in anything he couldn't touch. In fact, I don't think he believed in me very much. At the time, I'm sure he didn't.
And when I walked in his office, I said, Doc, I won't tell you. He said, no, son, I'm going to tell you. You're in a lot of financial trouble. You've lost over $800,000. You're the most skeptical man I've ever met in my life.
But I talked to him for a while, and I did something that I hadn't done in many years, leave my office. I said, son, I think God has something in store for you. I think he has something in store for both of us. And I have a feeling, a spiritual feeling. My soul tells me to go with you.
And the next morning we left for the oil field. And strange thing, he walked out across the leaves. And as he walked across the leaves,
I started to get weak. And I looked down at my hands were bleeding. Naturally, for the first time, it shocked me, and I just sort of passed out. Just got weak. I felt my soul leaving my body.
First thing I thought about was stopping the blood. So I started sticking, handkerchiefs in his hands. And I held on to his arms, and it just, he just shook me, just holding on to him.
Now, I didn't know I was going to have stigmata, but I could feel it. I've done it before. And my hands bled. Of course, my spirit left my body. The fact of it is, I didn't know exactly what was happening, but I learned afterwards because I was told. And they drove the flag where the blood dripped off, a little puddle of blood. And that was our first well, a very successful one. We have struck wells where a geologist says there's no oil there.
You spoke of this bleeding from the hands. Something like that could really be interpreted as a theatrical kind of stunt. How do you explain it? Were there holes in his hands? Where was the blood coming from?
The original so-called theatrics happened 2,000 years ago on a hill called Golgotha in Jerusalem. Now, there's miracles haven't passed. The day of miracles are still here. It's a miracle I'm sitting here talking to you.
Stigmata will come on you when you're concentrating deep, trying to really help someone. If I'm trying to help myself, no. But if I was trying to help you, if you were in serious trouble, and concentrate, and project and pray, the body is just like a log or something laying. The spirit takes over. And after the spirit takes over, these things happen. When the stigmata comes, I pass out. I'm just like a dead man.
The oldest literature known to man tells of an all-powerful force underlying everything in nature and occurring throughout the universe. This mysterious force was called prana, and those who learned how to tap it, to channel it through themselves, were said to become like gods. But the world was barbarian then. Plunder and brute power were easier to understand than godliness. Gradually, blood and sand covered the ancient texts. Countless generations would live and die before Western civilization took hold on the shores of the Mediterranean. Less than 100 years ago, Western scholars began to translate what they took to be ancient Hindu myths. A literature richly imaginative with its talk of cosmic energy and chariots of fire flown by gods from the sky. Every culture in the history of man has had individuals claiming to possess extraordinary powers. Will we be the first to prove that such powers actually exist? Geniuses, psychics, superstar athletes, masters of the martial arts. What is it that they all have in common? On the surface, it might seem ridiculous to compare a brilliant pianist with an unstoppable running back. But they have one significant thing in common. They are extraordinary. Why? Where does their gift come from? Is it possible that they are able to tap some sort of force which is generally unavailable to the average person? The Lee brothers, Ju Bang Lee and Ju Sang Lee, are masters of the Korean martial art Hwarang Do. Using ki power or internal energy, they are able, they say, to make their bodies lighter, heavier, hard like steel, or capable of blocking out pain. Ki power supposedly resides in everyone in an area about 3 inches below the navel, but only masters have learned to manipulate it like the Lee brothers. They are able to push their bodies seemingly beyond human endurance, without injury. A steel wedge pressed against the throat, struck by blows hard enough to splinter wood.
The concentration aspect is the most important. Preparatory exercise beforehand is one method of building up this power, controlling it for short periods of time. Then when the truck passes over the stomach, as long as the mind does not lose concentration, then there's no problem. If it loses concentration even for 1 instant, then injury can occur.
It's impossible to tell whether a phenomenally gifted athlete is simply doing things any good athlete can do, but doing them better, or whether he is also tapping an entirely different level of human capability. In the extraordinary experiment filmed by Soviet scientists, which you are about to see, there is no such confusion. The gifted subject is clearly doing something people are supposedly not able to do. Now, either the film is scientific fraud, or Nina Kulagina is moving objects with willpower alone. American scientists who have seen this film do not consider it fraudulent. Madame Kulagina has become quite famous for her controversial and still unexplained power. Whatever it is, it reportedly leaves her exhausted after a session like this. Dr. Thelma Moss, a leading American researcher in extrasensory phenomena, was impressed enough by witnesses' reports of Madame Goulagana's feats that she designed some willpower experiments of her own. These were in conjunction with her pioneering work in Kuhlman photography, which some researchers believe to reveal some form of energy surrounding the body.
There we see one man's finger and another one interacting with him. As we watch, we can observe that while the two fingers are in fairly close position to each other, the person on the left is blank in this interaction. As soon as the other person removes his hand, the emanations come out brilliantly all around. Here we have an interaction between two men who are having an argument. As they continue with their verbal fight with each other, the person on the left gets weaker and weaker. By an act of will, the man on the right is actually erasing that other person, but suddenly he fights back. And here you can watch, slowed down, that extraordinary interaction between the two men.
No camera is used to make a Kuhlman photograph. A weak current of electricity passing through the film to an object in direct contact with the film produces the picture. For Kuhlman movies, objects, in this case fingertips, are placed against a transparent electrode and filmed by an ordinary motion picture camera. All right. You're neither a 10th degree black belt nor a mysterious woman from behind the Iron Curtain. Let's say you're an ordinary person. Suddenly you're singled out by crisis. A friend is trapped under the wheels of a car. You have to lift the car to save his life. Could you do it? Most of us have heard stories of people who did. And of course, they're never able to repeat the action later. Where did that burst of superhuman energy come from? Jack Swartz says there was nothing extraordinary about his powers of concentration until he found himself fighting with the Dutch resistance during World War II. Suddenly, he had to become almost superhuman just to stay alive. Now, he is a favorite subject with several leading researchers in parapsychology.
There's alcohol to get rid of any of the oils, and what I'm doing right here. I just blow in there just to evaporate some of the alcohol, and I just rub some electrode paste into the skull. And it'll glob more. And I'll just repeat this once again. Eric, sheet this up. Control frontal area. That goes into number 8.
Well, I'm going to push this needle through the left bicep, and I like to state it is an unsterilized needle, and let it totally penetrate. It will go in on this side here on the inside of the arm and come out on the outside. And I'll leave it in for several seconds, and then we'll pull it out again to show that the first place in the recording which is at the moment being done of my brain waves, my heart rate, and my muscle motion, and the galvanic skin response to see what kind of changes would occur physiologically. And then when I pull it out, the attempt is going to be made not to make it bleeding and to have the holes close as fast as possible. Would you like to comment something on this?
Well, I think I'd like to say, Jack, that although under some circumstances this could occur without bleeding, certainly most often with a needle of this size, pushing it all the way through the upper arm, you would get a reasonable amount of bleeding, and particularly if you happen to hit a larger vein.
Do you think, Dr. Leslie, that there would be any indication of physiological changes taking place?
Right, I think that would be a much better way to evaluate it. You're hooked up to this apparatus, and I think that would give a much better idea of what response is occurring.
Okay, I will now start penetrating.
There doesn't appear to be any bleeding at this point, and certainly I didn't detect any particular appreciation of pain on Jack's part. The instrumentation will perhaps show whether there's been a change of any sort or not.
Could you give a comment on where it has penetrated? Has it gone just through skin, or has it gone through tissue? Has it hit some veins?
It appears, Jack, as though it's gone through certainly the skin, possibly a small vein in this area, and I think through the biceps muscle as well.
I'm now going to pull the needle out, and then you just observe what happens with the arm. Now, Dr. Leslie, would you be so kind to put a kind of a physical tourniquet on there to see if we can get any blood out of it?
Certainly, there's no evidence of external bleeding and no evidence of any hematoma underneath the skin. No swelling of any kind, really.
The Lee brothers, Nina Kolagina, Jack Swartz astonish us. But spectacular though they are, their feats alone can hardly be said to prove the existence of an unknown force. If only we could see it somehow. Perhaps we can. Again, through Thelma Moss's Kirlian photography and the mysterious phenomenon of the phantom leaf.
Well, this was a very long and frustrating process, the search for the phantom leaf. And it was only after 2 years that we finally obtained this. Our procedure evolved so that we would cut a leaf directly from the plant. Then, before the leaf was ever placed on film, part of it was cut. It was then placed in contact with the 4x5 piece of film, covered with a piece of glass, and with a piece of copper backing. An electrode was attached to the stem of the leaf. Suddenly, the phantom. Not only do we see the edge where the leaf has been sharply cut, but continuing beyond where we assume the leaf would show had it not been cut away. This particular leaf has been cut in a pie shape. We can see that the phantom gradually emerges. When the emanations do emerge from where the leaf has been cut, it shows the same jet-like emission that the rest of the leaf reveals. Here is a phantom produced not in our laboratory, but by Mr. Robert Wagner at Cal State Long Beach. He chose an ivy leaf for this portrait, and very brilliantly one can see that the tip of the leaf is clearly visible, even though it has been cut away.
Is the energy body of the leaf, which we seem to see in the Kirlian photograph, related in some way to the invisible energy with which Nina Kolagina manipulates objects, or which the Lee brothers are apparently able to focus? In the electromagnetic spectrum, radio and television waves are transmitted and received with the use of antennas. If what we are looking for is a form of energy, would an antenna of some kind help us to find it? Dr. Paris N. Garefis, a Los Angeles dental surgeon, read some amazing accounts of dental implant operations performed beneath pyramid structures. The report stated that pain and swelling were significantly reduced, perhaps due to something called pyramid power.
The first operation a year ago was done without the pyramid grips, because by that time we didn't have them in the ceiling of our operatory. Today we will perform this operation under the pyramid grips, which at this point are hanging in the ceiling of our operatory, and we are very curious to find to what extent we will have different type of phenomenon, pain-wise, healing-wise, as well as from the personal point of view of our patient. We have been using now the pyramids installed in one of my operatories for about 4 months. And my observations were very encouraged to the point that we don't have as much pain, and in such of those heavy operated patients, we didn't have pain at all. Swelling-wise, which is a procedure that always comes post-operatively, we were doing very, very well, and in several instances people went right away in their jobs. In any kind of surgical procedure, we incise and we break the tissues. And there is a theory that that way we break that magnetic field. Pyramids as antennas take, concentrate, give back bioplasmic energy to the surrounding field, and we don't have as much breakdown of this magnetic field. Therefore, we have a better kind of healing post-operatively, as well as we have elimination of the pain procedures. There is a definite fact that there is a source of energy activated through the pyramids.
This is a pyramid system which I designed about 3 years ago, and it's a very advanced system. We have been able to sleep as little as 3 hours a night for the last 3 years with very good dream remembrance and a very good charge of body energy, which will give us energy throughout the rest of the day.
I have to get up very early in the morning, and one that likes to sleep as I do, I have no trouble at all getting up and feel just terrific.
The system itself is actually a lens of 25 individual pyramids curved to concentrate or focus the pyramid energy resulting from the shape of the pyramid. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, sweetheart.
Courtney was conceived underneath this grid. We had tried 3 years to have a child, and we found as soon as we put up the grid that conception occurred within 30 days. And in fact, sex became a lot more pleasurable, and one's sexual awareness or sensitivity to it is increased dramatically, and this is the result of one nice try.
All of these theoretically and seemingly disparate forces are being evaluated scientifically today. Is it possible that they are all different aspects of something in the universe which we are only now beginning to glimpse? Visionaries say that we are multidimensional beings, but that we identify with only one level, the physical. We think that we are our bodies. We consider ourselves individual entities. The development of the individual is a fairly recent occurrence in our evolution. We tend to think of it as the ultimate level, but is this necessarily so? There are those among us who say that this image of ourselves limits our further growth, pointing to the ecological imbalances that have forced themselves upon our awareness. They say that the time has come to participate in the forces of nature which we have unsuccessfully tried to master. Perhaps then we will find that our real selves are far greater in scope than we had ever imagined. Perhaps we will discover that we ourselves are the unknown force.
I feel when you're dead, you're dead. You either go to heaven or hell and live in a coffin forever. That's about it.
When a person dies, he's dead. Just like the word said, he's gone. It's the end, it's the living end. There's nothing left.
I need help. I need people to pay attention to my fear of dying. I need them to let me feel it, and I need them to help me. It's so hard to ask for help like that.
I lost my fiancé in a plane crash. But I remember the day that he appeared to me vividly. He stood in a blaze of light and he held out his hands and he said just 2 words, "Please believe."
We would ask now of death. You would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king whose hand is to be laid upon him in great honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling. For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? Bring yourself out of mourning into a moment of peace. Think on what it took to create a human life. In the time of pregnancy, a woman tells the entire story of evolution. And in every one of us is that story, starting from one seed into a fish, into a mammal, into man, breaking into the sac and coming into life.
It has been said that of all the world's creatures, only man has been cursed with the knowledge that he must one day die. Yet down through the ages, we've also been told that there is a world of the spirit beyond death. Is it possible the real curse is not our knowledge of death, but our ignorance of immortality? Would we live our lives differently if death held no fear for us? We only live once, we are warned, and we try to crowd as much into that lifetime as possible. At my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. How we do grieve. But how would the death of our loved ones affect us if we could really believe that they have simply entered another dimension of existence where we will soon join them? If some part of our being does, in fact, survive the disintegration of our body, what is it like? Where does it go? Are we reincarnated, born again as a new human being? Do we enter another system, a higher plane of reality? Fear and grief, death's grim mourners, have driven man to seek answers to the riddle of immortality for thousands of years. For some, faith alone in some sort of hereafter has never been enough, while the idea of our total annihilation at the whim of nature is intolerable. Such people have continually sought evidence, convincing evidence of a world beyond death.
Off the coast of Fort Lauderdale, Dr. Ray Brown, a physician and amateur diver, experienced a most extraordinary event, 40 feet beneath the ocean.
The divers got too close and the eel got tangled up in this glove. While trying to get the eel off the diver's glove, I ran out of air. I forgot all about, in the excitement of fighting with the eel, I forgot about air. I didn't experience fear at this point. I was excited about whether I would make it or not. But the worst I expected was to pass out, which some divers do when they run out of air. So I relaxed and started up, and I didn't become excited or fearful until the Fort Lauderdale tour pulled over, and I started looking up through the glass ports at all these people, and I don't know who was putting on a show for who. Apparently I was the showpiece this day because the announcer was announcing, look at the divers. So I had to scoot to the side, try to survive. brushing past the large props. I went for the side of the boat. Speedboat decided to squeeze between the tour boat and our anchored boat. I just broke the surface in time to see the front of the boat right at my head. I rolled forward, the boat struck me, and I slid right down the center of the boat, and I went through the prop. This drove me down in the water approximately 40 feet. All kinds of thoughts went through my mind. I was worried about what was happening, and I realized that I was dying, that this was death. I could see a little trickle of blood flowing past me. I felt shock. My arms were extended, and I was just floating free. At 40 feet, you're weightless. You don't go up or down, you just float. And it's like being in space. And all at once, a deep relaxation came over me, and I felt as though someone had thrown a switch, and everything in me relaxed. I could see sea life, sea anemones, all of the tropical fish, and I was so absorbed in this beautiful scene with a clarity that I'd never had before. I forgot all about what was happening physically. And this awareness, or this visual impact, grew. It was so intense, and it was like dropping water in a pond, and it began to expand like a wave. It kept growing and growing, and I had expanded clear around the globe. After overlapping the planet several times, this awareness gathered potency, and all at once it burst free. And I was totally free, flying through space outside of the confines of the Earth. My awareness was, with full vision, was traveling outward, and I was touching other planets. I was aware of going beyond this universe into other galaxies, and it just kept going, all 360 degrees, expanding. I observed other life forms, other worlds with people, and it just kept going and going. I was shaken away from this when I felt a hand reach up and grab my shoulder, and then I was aware of someone pushing me, pulling me through the water and pushing me to the surface. And then after being pushed up on to the deck of the boat, I was lifted into the Coast Guard helicopter, and paramedics were shining lights into my eyes, and they were talking with each other, saying he's dead. And all the time I'm very awake, and I'm literally to myself shouting, I'm okay. But they don't, my voice isn't working, nothing's happening. And until they landed on the hospital pad and used the respirator on me, I was still quiet. And then all at once, this switch that turned off, all of a sudden I felt it turn on, and the life force jumped back into my body. It was like sort of an electric shock. As a doctor, I realized that it's not an easy thing to explain how something like this can happen. Logically, you do not survive after 4 or 5 minutes without air. The only explanation that I have is that in this experience, my body did, in fact, shut off. And by not having any requirements, my organs survived this experience.
Spirit photography is nearly as old as the camera itself. In the earliest use of film, mysterious photographs with unexplained figures in the background have been haunting the seemingly ordinary people who took them. Are these apparitions the products of fakery, or is photography somehow capable of recording what the naked eye cannot see? The sound of footsteps walking downstairs when no one is there. We are at Raynham Hall, Norfolk, England. This apparition is said to resemble a female ancestor of the estate's current owner. Queen's House at the Naval College in London. On June 19, 1966, Dr. Ralph W. Hardy, an Orthodox Methodist minister, made a time-lapse photograph of this staircase. A ghostly, hooded figure appeared somehow. a woman in Minnesota snapped a picture of her husband. Suddenly, she said, a free floating hand appeared on top of the television set. Before she could get a picture of it, it disappeared. But when the photograph of her husband was developed, the disembodied hand appeared on the TV screen. The phantom bulb snatcher of Lake Tahoe was caught by a woman photographing her new house. When a light bulb suddenly went out, she replaced the bulb and took another picture. When the photos came back, she discovered this possible explanation for why the bulb had gone off. This old-fashioned portrait has been in the family since 1888. The little girl in the photograph is a sister of the elderly woman, but the family says there was never a picture taken of the youngster, who died at the age of 7. The family can't even identify the other two faces in the photograph. A bizarre substance called ectoplasm is said to be released by a medium while in a certain state of trance. Ectoplasm supposedly can vary in consistency from vapor to solid. It is said to smell like ozone and to range in color from white, which is most common, to black. This is reportedly ectoplasm being materialized here. Spiritualists believe that ectoplasm is drawn from a medium by spirit influence, often forming itself into representations of spirit entities or of human features, like the human-looking faces here. Those who claim to have handled ectoplasm in seances report that it has an alive, pulsating feeling. Some mediums forbid touching it, insisting that this could result in their death. Whether spiritualist-inspired, biophysically produced, or ingeniously hoaxed, ectoplasm has become part of the dramatic trappings of the seance. But until the day when we see cooperation between scientists and mediums supposedly capable of producing ectoplasm, we will not know whether it is the stuff by which disembodied spirits provide proof of their survival, or simply a grotesque gimmick by which charlatans manipulate the emotions of the gullible. Have you ever walked into an unfamiliar room and been overwhelmed by the sensation that you had been there before? Met someone for the first time you were sure you had known before? Why do some people feel ties to a particular time in history or experience, coming home to a foreign country? The French have a term for this eerie sensation they call a déjà vu, or seen before. Those who believe in reincarnation offer a possible explanation. They maintain that because we have lived many previous lives, we've made connections with many more people and places than those we are consciously aware of in this lifetime. Yet we retain subconsciously the indelible impressions of these past encounters and experiences. Regression is a psychological technique used to reach back into these alleged past lives. By getting in touch with past life experiences, one may gain insight into the continuity of life, the eternal nature of one's individual existence. Death, then, is seen as part of a perpetual evolution rather than an end in itself. Sometimes the subject is even taken through the experience of a past death with often dramatic results.
I believe that God is a merciful God, and because He is, He gives us many opportunities to come back and grow both mentally, physically, and spiritually until we can grow to a higher consciousness through the process of reincarnation. Because if all of nature recycles, why not man? And what is your married name now?
James.
Do you ever have any children?
One's 5. It's a little girl.
Can you see yourself at 50?
Yes. We have a ranch now.
Can you see yourself at 60?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are you still happy and everything's all right?
Mm-mm.
What's the matter?
One of my children just died.
Of what?
Train crash.
How many people were killed?
20, 25.
Now that you've been able to see the train crash, advance in time. And I want you to take me to the hour of your death.
About 63 or 64.
Okay.
I'm suffering from a concussion. I tripped down the stairs. And I hit my head.
And you hit your head?
Yes.
Is somebody taking care of you?
Yes, a doctor, but he's not sure if I'm going to make it.
Now I want you to rise up above yourself. Can you see yourself rise above your body? What does it feel like?
There's no more pain.
Does that feel good? All right, if you're shot with an arrow, how long is it before you die?
Hours.
Hours. Does anybody try to help you?
I was alone, just looking at the sky.
What do you feel right now as you're laying there dying?
My body getting numb.
What do you feel about this man?
He hates me. He wanted my position, and his face is very mean. He's fat.
Rise up and then look down. Can you see your body?
Yes.
All right. How do you feel now?
Light.
Open your eyes. Just open your eyes.
Ever since I was small, I was afraid of the Chinese opera mask. Whenever I look at them, I get a chill. And now I realize why. Because the person who shot me looks like the Chinese opera mask. Have the same features.
And what about your stomach? Where are you?
I always have stomach problems. It's sort of hard lump over here. Now I know it's where the arrow landed.
And you can still feel it now?
Yeah.
Try to visualize a door. Any kind of door. Just let it come to your subconscious mind. Do you see a door? What does it look like?
It's a double door.
A double door.
Yes.
All right, I want you to open the door.
Okay.
I want you quickly to step through it. What do you see?
A well.
Go to the well.
All right.
All right, I want you now to get a bucket, and I want you to fill it full of water. I want you to look into the pail of water and quickly see the reflection. What do you look like?
A little boy.
A little boy.
Mm-hmm.
How old?
6, 7, somewhere in there.
What does your father do for a living?
He works with horses. He shoes horses.
Go to your father, where he works.
Okay.
All right, quickly go there.
All right. I see the fire. It's a fire pit. And there's horseshoes around. And I see some furniture that looks like he's been working on. He has talents. He can do anything.
All right, I want you now to let yourself advance in time. I want you to see yourself go through the years. Try to see yourself.
I'm wanting to cry.
What's happening there at that time? What's happening?
Something's happened. He's gone.
What's wrong?
I think he's died.
How did he die?
I think a horse fell on him.
How did it happen? Describe it to me.
I called to him. And then it come back on him. Oh, no, come on.
It's all right. It's all right.
And the horse jumped up and kicked him.
It kicked him. Yeah. All right. Okay. It's all right. You don't have to be afraid. This all happened in the past. Okay. Okay. You don't have to be afraid of the past. It's all right, because you don't have to worry. Your past can't hurt you.
The last few minutes before death can be one of the most enlightening experiences of a lifetime. Jim Mings has only a short time to live.
Feels good. It's an interesting sort of cage. I wonder if people find this often. There's a rock. Let's sit on the rock for a while. It's beautiful, peaceful, perfect. You're totally free, John. Totally free from pain. Your breathing is perfect. You're perfect in all ways. Jim, I want you to experience and feel that peace and beauty. Feel it, reach out, touch it. Feel the water, smell the water, Jim. Take the water and splash it on your arms, on your chest.
My friend was trying to help Mr. Mings be more relaxed and have more control over his body so that he could endure this. He is very weak. We had a very serious time last night in talking and leading a person down paths. You are helping them to relax the body so that the spirit has more chance to control the body, and you find a lesser physical reaction to pain.
What I've been doing with Jim is working with him to relieve any amount of tension I can, and I can help him get away from himself, away from the pain for temporary periods. The things that Jim is anticipating because of the release from the pain is far greater at this point in time than the pain itself. Jim, are you afraid of dying? Do you feel?
No fear of dying. But when you have cancer and you're in the condition that I'm in, the one thing you do know is that you can no longer perform your daily functions that you have always performed. And the misery that it is a hell on earth at times, indescribable. No way you can describe it. Just to live to go through that when everything else has come to an end, then I see no point in it. And I prefer to die myself.
Okay, you hear only my voice.
He becomes very frustrated and at times almost panicked because of a lack of air.
I'm going through the cough area. It's soothing. You're breathing better. The most important thing is there's no fear of death. There's total acceptance. Total recognition. It's inevitable. Listen to me. In this particular case, he knows that it's very soon. Most of us don't. So for Jim, I believe it opened new doors, evaluation processes, straightening things out. And I think in many ways it's been of benefit to him. And I think that's very important, and I feel that people in general should try to help someone that's passing over, not pretend it doesn't exist.
I wish more people could find the peace and the tranquility that we have found. The thing that I feel for my husband will be a loneliness and a deep grief because of a shared companionship of 35 years. But I won't feel a sorrow for him. I know that our spiritual companionship and the love we have shared will go on forever.
Death, be not proud, wrote the poet John Donne more than 3 centuries ago. For those whom thou think'st thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death.
Dr. Kubler-Ross's 10-year study of death experiences has convinced her that there is life after death. Of hundreds of people declared clinically dead who were later revived, not one was afraid to face death again. You know, these people are the only real experts we have on the experience of death. When they speak of dying as an indescribably beautiful transition to another world, why does death terrify us so, if not from our own ignorance? This blind fear exacts a terrible cost in human suffering. Perhaps fear, then, is our real enemy, while death may be only change.
Told me things that no human being in an ordinary state of consciousness could possibly know. And even though I was a lawyer, and even though I'm a skeptic, I had to be convinced, because what's real is real, what I could see. And then he told me about my back. And he told me about all the treatments I'd had and how they hadn't worked. And then he reached out his hand and he said, in the name of Christ, you're healed, and my pain was gone. And now, a year and a half later, it's still gone, and I praise God for that.
What is the mysterious force called healing? Western science and medicine have traditionally looked for the answer in the laboratory. Startling and sophisticated methods of healing, predating the beginning of science by thousands of years, have generally been ignored or ridiculed. The scientific method demands controlled experimental conditions and results which can be measured and duplicated for verification. But today, we may be on the threshold of balancing the scientific side of our nature with its non-rational counterpart, the vast world of human knowledge and belief ranging from orthodox religion to the occult. Modern technology is finally enabling a few pioneering scientists to measure and verify extremely subtle energies which science has long refused to acknowledge. Phenomena which until now have been detectable only by those rare individuals of extraordinary sensitivity called mystics and psychics. In the present atmosphere of tolerance which prevails in much of society and the scientific community toward the study of so-called paranormal phenomena, nothing strikes so strong a chord as the voice crying, "I am healed." The caduceus of Mercury, symbol of medicine. Could it have originated as an occult symbol for a system of healing far older than the physical science of medicine? Such a theory maintains that the staff of the caduceus represents the human spine. The two snakes symbolize Kundalini, or serpent fire, a tremendously powerful force believed to lie dormant at the base of the spine in all human beings. Although alien to most Westerners, the principle of Kundalini is significant in Hinduism, yoga, and most mystical and occult doctrines. It is gradually being introduced in the West as an element of bioenergy forms of therapy. Supposedly,
the rare individual who can learn to tap this natural force will attain an increasingly higher level of consciousness, as symbolized by the wings of the caduceus, even eventually being able to leave the body at will. This esoteric interpretation of a familiar yet mysterious symbol in the midst of everyday reality may be an important key to understanding the phenomenon of psychic or faith healing. Many alleged healers claim that their powers are directed not to the physical body, which we can see and touch, but to far more subtle energy bodies surrounding it. To some, Catherine Kuhlman was a saint. To others, she was a sort of superstar of the bizarre, a possessed-looking woman in a flowing gown whose temple of healing was the TV tube. One thing fairly certain about the charismatic woman who liked to call herself the handmaiden of the Lord was her ability to transfer a strange power to those with whom she came in contact.
I stood there amazed in 1948 when the woman told me that she'd been healed of a tumor in Franklin, Pennsylvania. I was awed. Or when this Mr. Orr came and said that he'd received sight in an eye. Because I'd never touched him, I'd never prayed for him. I too was curious as to what had happened. Recently, the St. Louis Globe-Democrat reported that since 1948, and this is the figure that they gave, that at least 2 million people had been healed by the power of God through this ministry.
At one time, I thought this was well, it was phony. But when it happened to me, I'll just tell the whole world that this is the truest thing that ever was. And I've seen healings here that make your hair stand on end.
Hi, my name is Carol, and I had a healing last month. I had ankylosing spondylitis, which is arthritis of the small joints of the spine, and it had been verified by x-rays that calcification had set in, and the doctors had confirmed it as being incurable and that it would get progressively worse. I had a healing, and my spine is straight, and I'm fine, and praise the Lord, I'm better than I have ever been, and I'll never be the same again.
Million people. This is what the news media has given. That's the reason, you know, the ministry needs no defense. These miracles of healing need no defense. Sitting there are thousands who are watching. And they may feel as though that I am over dramatic when someone is wonderfully healed by the power of God. What they don't understand is that I'm just as thrilled with the very last miracle that I saw God performed as the first time. There are no words in the human vocabulary to describe spiritual experiences and emotions because these things are spiritual, but as real as the air that you breathe.
I thought they needed more air conditioning. I was getting so terribly hot, and then all at once, when I turned to look at Bernie, my head turned without holding it up. Now I can feel my hands and everything, and I noticed as soon as I stood up, I could feel my feet. With multiple sclerosis, you don't have any feeling.
I was a 245-pound vegetable, all humped over, stiff-necked, left side paralyzed. As I walked in this auditorium,
I had one too.
God performed a miracle. He straightened my body completely up. I had no ill feelings. My hands straightened up. I could turn my neck. My left side had use in it. I was a new man.
I know from my own experience in my 30 years of surgery and working with patients of this kind that this is medically impossible, that this has to be a miracle of God to give me this healing of my back and to relieve this constant pain that I had in my leg.
How do you feel now?
I feel vibrant.
Vibrant?
I feel like I could shock the world.
By doing what?
Praise the Lord.
I was blind and was led around like blind people.
Had you seen a doctor about your condition?
Oh, yes, for years.
And what happened this afternoon?
I don't know. I started to cry, and I didn't ever cry much because I think that's one of the things about glaucoma. You don't have much fluid in the eyes or something. And then I thought I saw the stage, but I didn't believe it. I thought it was in my mind's eye that I saw it, and I took my glasses off and rubbed my eyes, and I said to Quan, I see a little boy in a green sweater. I was stunned. I couldn't say anything. I kept wanting to cry, but I couldn't. It was just that I was walking around dazed. I couldn't believe I was really seeing it.
Even though I believe in the supernatural power of God, I'm not personally immune to sickness. I too can become ill.
Catherine Kuhlman died following open-heart surgery. It's likely, however, that her legacy of love and healing will be an inspiration for generations to come. The lady from the little town of Concordia, Missouri, made too strong an imprint on too many millions of people to be soon forgotten. What you're about to see is upsetting to many people. However, the controversial nature of what is known as psychic surgery must not stand in the way of the West's attempt to explore and understand this mysterious phenomenon.
Sometimes they feel, the touch or the pushing down. They say they feel pressure when he's pushing down on a particular part of the body, but there's no actual pain. They're using their bare hand. There is no sanitation, no asepsis whatsoever as far as the operating area is concerned, or even the area on the body that is being operated on. But no one has ever gotten an infection as a result of these operations. There are some who believe that it is psychologically, but when you go out there, let's say with a cancerous tumor or with a crippled bone or something, and you come back without that cancerous tumor and with your limb working again, well, something happened. It is not necessary to open the body and show blood. Only in primitive areas is this done for the benefit of primitive people. The Americans kind of stumbled on this, and they insist on seeing the blood. When the healer takes his hand out of the opening, it closes by itself and there's no scar. And the reason that there is no scar is because there's no incision made. There's no sharp object, no scalpel used to damage the tissue. There's no anesthesia, no hypnosis. The healers control the bleeding and the pain. Representatives who have taken an official stand and a negative stand is the American Medical Association. They are the ones who definitely call this quackery and who say that it's just absolute fraud. But it's interesting to see that no one from the AMA, no scientific team from the AMA has ever gone out there to investigate.
Why did you go to the Philippines?
There were three things, actually, that I went there for. The main one was endometriosis. Endometriosis is a condition in which the endometrium has grown into the muscle wall of the uterus. And the result of that is excess bleeding and pain. I had low back pain, basically from a slipped disc. And also, a few months previous to this, I'd been in an automobile accident and had a whiplash injury.
How have you felt since you returned? Have you been back to a doctor since then?
Since being in the Philippines.
And being treated? Yeah.
Yes. I was back, obviously, for the endometriosis. Mm-hmm. And as far as the doctor's concerned, I'm just fine. I was very pleased. The whiplash injury is completely healed. I don't have to have the hysterectomy. When I first went into the room, I was really a little nervous. However, there was no pain at all. There was a kind of pulling and tugging and kneading that I could feel, and actually fairly deep. It wasn't simply on the surface. But there was no pain either in the uterine operation nor in the back operations. The only time there was something Slightly different from that was when Juan Blanche was working with me. He said he felt that I still had a blood clot connected with a whiplash injury. He was working on my neck and made an incision, which I felt sort of like a razor cutting.
Oh, yeah, right. I see it right here. Just a razor hairline.
Right. He didn't come close enough to use a razor, either in my case or with the other men that I saw. What I saw Juan Blanche do is to stand about 18 inches or 2 feet from the area that he's working on and make a motion in the air with his finger, which did not touch the body at all. And an incision appears. In this particular case, he used my hand in the air, made a motion in the air with my finger, and as soon as the incision appeared, I was able to inspect the area.
Besides having a PhD in counseling, Dr. Veitch is a licensed physical therapist, quite knowledgeable in the composition of the body's various tissue layers. She examined the incision that Juan Blanche apparently made, using his hand to guide her finger. She was able, she said, to distinguish clearly the appropriate layers of fat, muscle, and tissue. A phenomenon primarily of the Philippines and Brazil, psychic surgery will strike many as entirely alien to healing practices in the West.
Salutary kiss of greeting to your neighbor. Let's fill this atmosphere with warmth and love. How much I love you. Now as we meditate, God is love. Love is a healing remedy. We're going to reach out to areas where man has seemed to have difficulty. As we concentrate that the gifts of the Holy Spirit might function, or what the secularists might speak of as the paranormal, let us believe. Let us believe. Sister Ingram, you're concerned about the losing of your sight. You're not able to see me clearly. Things just blur to you. You have to stumble around lately through crowds and are not able to see even people's faces close up to you clearly.
That's true.
You've told me nothing about your condition. Is that correct?
No, I haven't.
Give that little sweetheart a little bit of love. Thank you, baby. Peace. Now, take your glasses off. Let's just dare in our faith. We've seen Sister Brown here, who was blind, totally healed. We saw one of our sisters blind from her childhood. It could be hysterical blindness, whatever. We're not concerned. She was blind and could not see. Now, look at my face. I'm going to hold up some fingers. You concentrate hard. I love you. The people love you. And most importantly, Christ loves you. What do you see? How many fingers?
3.
One finger. You don't even need your glasses, child. Let's all be thankful as she cries back there. Let's cry and rejoice with her. Edie? Are your fingers numb in your right hand? And having enormous headaches in your head?
Yes.
Reach your hands out. Reach your hand out to me. Reach the fingers out that are bothering you. Now, is the pain gone? Conley. What a sensation about you. Did you once lose a loved one, I think the name of James?
Yes, that's my brother.
He was 14 years of age. And he was reading something, and someone asked him for what he had, and he didn't want to give it.
Yes,
and
he did.
That person shot him to death.
Yes, he did.
I'm saying this to give you faith so that you can mount up, because you've been feeling pain here in the chest and in the back. And you injured your foot some time ago, and you've been having constant pain in it where you had to move around with a chair.
Yes, I did.
I do not know you, and you've told me or no one else the things I just mentioned.
No,
Is that
you
true?
sure haven't.
Now, where's your pain?
Don't feel it,
The doctor has relieved you from your work in the second row. You have a bad spinal condition.
Yes.
And your hip is injured.
Yes.
Step from your wheelchair. Begin to step from your wheelchair. Try it. Just try it. Just try it. We have nothing to lose. We have no face to lose, because we've said we're no panacea. But I have seen more healings here than I've ever seen any place. I love you. Jesus Christ loves you. Jehovah Jireh. All the goodness of all the world's great religions, in the name and the mercy and the goodness of Jesus, wherein I stand. Come forth, my dear. Stand out. Take that step. Bless your heart. Take that step. Take that step. Now, move forward. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward, darling. You can do it. Move forward. Move forward. Child, sweetheart, would you step out my way just a moment so that I can just keep my love calm? Now, move forward. Freely, freely, freely. Now begin to exercise the hymn. Begin to exercise the joy. I love you. Christ loves you. The people love you. Now, sisters, walk briskly. Walk. Walk briskly. Walk.